All right, everyone. So the last time you saw me, we ended on a bit of a downer. Sorry about that. But we talked about what makes up a healthy relationship, what an unhealthy relationship looks like, and all of that super fun stuff. So, as per usual, we're gonna go over everything to make sure you are paying attention. I know. So raise your hand if you can tell me what a personal boundary is. Over here. That's right, a personal boundary is a boundary that decides what you're comfortable and uncomfortable with, and you can't see it. Good job. Are boundaries the same for everyone? No, they're not. Good job, everyone. Good job. I've only asked you that a million times. What are the 4 major components that define our boundaries? I want one person to tell me all 4. Some of y'all put y'all's hands down. Okay, let's see how it is. Over here. Yes, all right, so it is your relationship with the person, who you're around, your mood or feelings that day, and where you are. Good job, you all do listen to me. Okay, so who can tell me the resource that I gave you all for if you or someone you care about is in an unhealthy relationship? I'll give you a hint, you could text it. Over here. That's right. It's called Love is Respect. You text Love is to 22522. All right, that's our recap. So, last class, right, we talked about healthy and unhealthy relationships. We talked about what can happen in those. Now, remember I told you all that we're today going to talk about what you all can do if your friend is in an unhealthy relationship, okay? And that actually starts with how we communicate. And that's what we're gonna talk about first. All right, so now we're gonna watch a video on communication.
Hey, Chris. This is Jane from Miss Sloane's biology class. Well, I was wondering if you would like to... No, that's not good. I was thinking maybe if you're not busy... No, that's terrible. Let's try. I wanted to invite you to go to the movies with me. So what do you think? Too needy? Effective communication is an important life skill that enables us to better understand and connect with the people around us. There are 3 different kinds of communication styles: passive, aggressive, and assertive. Being passive is giving in and saying yes when you don't really want to. Not asking for what you want. Or acting in a particular way in order to be liked. People who act too passively often end up feeling taken advantage of. They may begin to feel hurt, angry, or less confident about themselves. Another communication style is aggressive. Trying to get your own way by putting someone else down. Leave little room for others to talk or disagree. Scowling facial features, large hand or body gestures, and or invading someone's personal space. People with an aggressive communication style may get their way, but many times they end up being disliked by others. An assertive style is the healthy choice between these 2. Being assertive means giving people an honest no to things you don't want, refusing to use other people and refusing to let others use you. Asking straight up for what you want without putting anyone else down. People who are assertive often find it easy to make friends. They communicate in a way that respects other people's needs as well as their own. Learning how to effectively communicate with others is an important skill. It can help you to understand others, solve problems, as well as avoid and resolve conflicts. Ooh, it's ringing. Hi, Chris. It's Jane from... Oh, you were about to call me? Yeah, sure. I would love to go to the movies. Great. See you then. That went well. So, till next time, don't forget to visit me at amaze.org or go to my YouTube channel to watch more. Bye.
So, that was our video. So we all can respond differently in situations, right? Passively, aggressively, assertively. Now, to be clear, we should always be striving to communicate assertively, okay? Because that not only shows respect for ourselves, but also respect to the other person that we're communicating with, okay? But I do want to be really clear. How you communicate during a boundary violation does not make that boundary violation your fault. Ever, okay? Never ever. If your boundary is violated, it is not your fault, and you should not place any blame on yourself. However, I do want to stress the importance of communication, especially when it comes to people that you're going to be maintaining that relationship with, and being able to communicate your boundaries in a really healthy and assertive way so that moving forward in the future, you have an even healthier relationship. Okay, everyone, so now that we've talked about different ways of communicating, now we're actually going to do an activity where I'm going to read you some scenarios that involve a boundary violation, and I want you to focus on how the people in the scenario communicated their boundaries and how the other person responded and how they communicated. Okay? Cool. So scenario number 1, Amy and Daryl are one of the first couples to start dating in 8th grade. Amy loves that everyone knows they're a couple and always holds Daryl's hand in the hallway or puts her arm around him. Daryl really likes Amy, but has never been a really physical person and doesn't like public displays of affection. The next time Amy sees Daryl at school, she wraps her arm around Daryl's waist, gives a squeeze, and says, "Hi." Daryl is embarrassed and snaps back at Amy, "You don't have to do that every time we see each other." Amy pulls back immediately, says, "Fine," and walks away. So, how did they communicate their boundaries? So let's start with Daryl. What did Daryl say? Okay, so how did he say that? Right, so in this scenario, Daryl was a little bit aggressive, right? He was a little bit aggressive. That's how he communicated his boundary, and he didn't really say that a boundary was violated, right? He wasn't really direct, okay? So what about Amy? How did she respond? Over here. Yeah, so Amy was passive, right? She kind of just said one word and like walked away. She didn't really address anything either. That's right. Okay, so what could they have done differently in that moment? Over here. That's right. So Daryl in that moment could have said assertively, "Amy, I don't like it when you show affection to me in public. It makes me uncomfortable." Right? That's right. Daryl could have said that. But Amy also, if Daryl had been aggressive, Amy could have said, "Daryl, I'm so sorry. What can I do to make this better? Or what did I do? I don't want to do it again." Right? Amy could have also been assertive and communicated more clearly. Okay? So now let's rewind. What could have been done before this ever happened? Over here. That's right. So at some point, Daryl and Amy could have had a conversation about PDA, right? Public displays of affection. And in that conversation, Daryl would have had an opportunity to say, "You know what, I'm actually really not into that. It makes me uncomfortable." Amy could have said the opposite. And maybe they could have found like a middle ground, maybe holding hands, you know? So they could have communicated beforehand and then the whole situation wouldn't have happened. That's right. Okay, so one more scenario. Max and Julia spend a lot of time together now that they're a real couple. When they find some private time alone, they like to kiss a lot. Max really wants to do something more, and so the next time they're alone together, he tries to pull Julia's shirt up. She pulls it back down and says, "No," and keeps kissing Max. He tries again, and she says, "Max, no." Max remembers seeing in a movie that if you keep trying, sometimes the other person gives in. So he tries again. Julia pushes him off, stops kissing him and says, "I'm going home," and leaves. Now, how did they communicate those boundaries? Okay, I'm gonna go over here. Okay, so Julia was assertive, right? She was pretty clear. she said no multiple times, okay? What about Max? How was he communicating his boundaries, or once? Over here. Yeah, he was kind of aggressive, right? He wasn't using his words, he was using his actions, right? So that was aggressive. So in the moment, what could they have done differently? Over here. Okay. So you don't really see anything that Julia could have done differently, right? I have to agree. I think Julia handled herself pretty darn well, right? She said no multiple times. Maybe ideally she would have, after saying no the first time, said, no, I'm not ready for that. But at the same time, she did say no. So in my opinion, that's enough. But what about Max? That's right. The first time that she said no, Max could have stopped, right? In that moment, he could have stopped, apologized, and then continued what they were both comfortable doing, okay? What about before any of this happened? What could have been done differently? Over here. Yeah, they could have had a conversation, right? Not only for Julia, so she wouldn't have a boundary violated, but also so Max could express to Julia that he does want to try to do more, but in a safe space to where Julia's boundary isn't being violated. That's right. They could have had a conversation about what they're both comfortable and uncomfortable with. That way none of this would have ever happened. Now, I want to be really clear in the scenarios, what people said, how they said it, and when they said it, or when they did anything. It played a really important role, right, in how we perceived the situation and how it went down and how it impacted them. So I want to be clear that our tone of voice is so important when we communicate, and the words that we choose to use are really, really important when it comes to effective communication, especially when we're talking about really sensitive topics like boundaries and boundary violations. Okay, so those are really, really important things to keep in mind, your tone and the words that you choose to use. Okay, so we have talked about boundaries, unhealthy relationships, healthy relationships, all these things. And we've talked about ways that we can communicate, but we've also talked about how, as a friend, it can be really hard to know what to do and support a friend if something, if the boundary's been violated, if something's gone wrong. And so, as I'm sure all of you have probably experienced, there are times when a friend responds to something with us in a helpful way, right? And sometimes they might respond in a way that isn't very helpful. And it might actually hurt our feelings. So like, for example, let's say that you did really poorly on a test, right? And so you go and you're venting to your friend, and your friend responds and says, man, that really stinks. I'm really sorry. Like, I'm sure you'll do better on the next one, right? That was nice. Might make you feel better. But if they respond with saying, oh, wow, well, then maybe you should have studied harder, that's not helpful, right? It's already in the past. You can't go back and fix it. And it might hurt your feelings and make you feel even worse. But I also want to be really clear, we're all learning and growing. And so I want us to also acknowledge that there's going to be times, even moving forward, that you might respond in a way that's less helpful. You're human and that's okay. But we want to help you all respond in a way that's more helpful, not only for yourself, but also for your friends if something were to happen. So here's what we're going to do with this activity. I'm going to split you all into a couple of different groups, okay? And I'm going to give you a set of cards. And with those cards, I want you to split them up into two different groups, okay? One group is more helpful, and one group is less helpful, okay? So you are going to read these cards as if it is a response to someone having a boundary violation, okay? And what's going to happen is, as a group, you're going to decide which group they go in, less helpful, more helpful. And then after 2 minutes, you're gonna send one person from your group up here to put your cards where you think that they go. Okay? Everybody got it? Perfect. Okay, so let's go over all the things. We're gonna start with less helpful, and we're gonna end on more helpful because I want to. So, let's see what we have on less helpful. We have the conversation in a crowded space, public space, yeah, that's definitely not a good idea, right? If someone is sharing something personal, like a boundary violation, you want them to feel safe and secure, and not like a bunch of other people are just gonna hear their business, right? We also have go and talk to the person who did the boundary violation. That's less helpful, right? Because the boundary violation was not done to you. It's not your right to speak on that person's behalf, and you might actually make the situation worse, and that's way less helpful. We also have ask, why are you still with them? So for this one in particular, my mind goes to a romantic relationship that's unhealthy, right? And that's not a helpful question to ask, especially if they are in the middle of telling you what happened. Look shocked and say, no way that happened. That's really not helpful. It also comes off as if you don't believe them, and we should always believe someone if they tell us that a boundary has been violated. Ask, what did you do to make this happen? That is very victim blaming, right? We don't want to blame someone for having a boundary violated because it's not their fault. Make that really clear. Okay, so asking someone something like this makes it seem like it's their fault something happened. Say you should have known better. That's a classic not helpful response, okay? Like we talked about before, unhealthy relationships can happen, they happen really, really slowly and gradually, and it's hard to recognize it's happening until way later, okay? So that's not helpful. So let's talk about the ways that you can respond that are more helpful. Say, I promise I won't gossip about what you told me. That's huge, right? You all are in middle school and you're gonna go to high school, and it can be so easy to just go tell someone else's business. And by saying this to someone after they've told you something really personal can give them some peace of mind that you're not gonna go and do that. Say, I think we should get a trusted adult involved. I know a lot of you, each group, had this one, right? That's because it's really, really important that if anyone might be hurting themselves or others, right, that we get an adult involved. But even more so, if we feel like we want an adult involved, get one involved. That's huge. Very helpful. Ask, is there anything I can do? That's great, right? You are giving that option to that person who is telling you about a boundary violation so that they can express to you what they need, and you're not just deciding for them. That's fantastic. Ask, do you feel safe around them? That's a really great question to ask. That way, let's say it's someone who they have 3 classes with and you're in 2 of those classes too. If they answer no, maybe you can make sure you sit beside them or you sit with them at lunch, things like that. And if the answer is they don't feel safe, it's a really great time to get an adult involved. We have, say it's not your fault this happened. Yes, love that. That is such an important thing to say because, like I already said before, it is not anyone's fault that their boundary is violated, ever. And it's wonderful to remind someone of that. And lastly, let your friend talk without interrupting them. That's huge. Believe it or not, you don't need to know every single detail about what happened. You are simply there as a friend to hear what they are wanting to share. And by not interrupting them, you're giving them that space to do so. And that is fantastic and so helpful. Now, I really, really hope that you all remember some of these. And please know that it's okay if you did some of this other stuff in the past. It's okay. You're human. And honestly, you might respond that way even in the future on accident. That's okay. As long as you're striving to be more helpful, you're doing great. All right, so we just went over some helpful ways to respond if a friend experiences a boundary violation and how we can support them. And we also went over some not so helpful ways, right? So I want to be really clear that, we can kind of see why. I don't want anyone to feel bad about how they might have responded in the past. And if they did respond using some of these less helpful ways, I don't want you to feel bad about that. In fact, I want you to take this and be like, all right, now I know some more helpful ways that I can help a friend. But I do want to be really clear. I'm sure you all noticed and probably got a little annoyed at the card that all of you had that said, say, I think we should get a trusted adult involved. And I want to be really clear, that's really, really important. Because if it is anything that is dangerous, where someone else could get hurt or someone could be hurting themselves, an adult needs to be involved, Or if you just feel like you want to get an adult involved, get an adult involved. That's the only requirement. We don't want you all to take on more than you can handle or more than you should have to handle. Now, but like, what is a trusted adult? Okay, so when we look at these situations, when I say trusted adult, I mean someone that you would trust to go to about any of these things. That can be people in your school that we've talked about, like your guidance counselor, your family resource officer, maybe a teacher that you really trust. But it can also be a caregiver, a parent. It could be a friend's parent, things like that, okay? But I also want to remind you all that, you know, I did give you all some text lines because, yet again, there could be times when we want support, but we don't feel maybe safe to go to someone else. And I want to acknowledge that because that can be a reality. So I want to remind you those text lines, okay? So texting hello to 741-741, that crisis text line, or that love is respect, texting love is to 22522. Those are, again, free and like national hotlines. So it's not going to get like tracked down to you, and like it's not like if you're in a small town, it's going to get back that you went to someone. But to please know that those are resources for you to use. Now, the next class, we're going to be switching gears kind of a lot, and we're going to be talking about safety in your school kind of as a whole, okay? So I'll talk to you all then.